basically building off of your last answer when I asked you, like, how can we do this? How do you feel like we can run Cassandra on Kubernetes the right way? Like, what needs to be done? Is it truly possible at this time, or is there still, like, what kind of gap do we have? A lot of questions I'm throwing at you, so just feel free to go one by one.
Yeah, well, let's pick through what's the state of the art. What do you get today? Like with an operator, what you're getting is the shim layer between Kubernetes and Cassandra. We'll talk about Cassandra specifically because that's the one I'm the most involved in, but it has plenty of parallels for every other thing in the universe, so don't worry. Cassandra, is a distributed database, and it has its own notion of replication. For instance, like when you deploy a bare metal Cassandra cluster, it manages its own replication, placement, all that stuff, and data placement. The Kubernetes replication controller has its own ideas. Like, oh, no, pod, you're going over here, because that's the way I see it. So the operator that was built for Cassandra actually mitigates some of that discussion. It saves Cassandra from what Kubernetes wants to do. For instance, you could bury yourself pretty bad. Kubernetes is not aware of data placement, not even thinking about it. It's like, oh, you want a pod? Got it. You run over there. It could stack up a bunch of Cassandra nodes on a single piece of hardware somewhere, and you wouldn't even know it. And that's a huge anti-pattern, because let's say the power goes out and you're on that one honking machine you got. Well, what's going to happen? You're going to lose a significant amount of your Cassandra cluster, not even knowing, like, what just happened. I mean, a quarter of my cluster just blinked out. And it's just because, and it's not any fault other than it's just a default behavior of Kubernetes. So the operator's job partially is to, when Kubernetes is like, I'm going to save you, the operator's like, sure, dude. And then it's like, here's what we're really going to do to the rest of the cluster, and then to move stuff around. It's like, we got it. And so everyone's happy, right? And that works. It works really well. But that's what you're doing, though, is you're building technical debt into an operator. And I think that's the thing that I see a lot in operators, is you're taking a thing that was built in one way and probably built well, and trying to translate into what Kubernetes wants to do, which is also built well, but you're building technical debt because there's now a parity mismatch. And I think that's answer question number one. let's get to that part first.
Yeah, for sure. So like, in your eyes, biggest obstacle to running Cassandra on Kubernetes would be this whole idea of, like, just building technical debt with the operators.
Yeah, yes, and there's some really cool projects like the Kudu project. I don't know if you know the Kudo project, not Kudo, where they're trying to make boilerplate basically for operators. And I think that's a really good idea for when you bring your thing to Kubernetes, you don't need to go through a lot of cycles to build a complete operator. You provide a CRD, and it basically compiles you a nice operator, which is pretty cool, right? But it skips like some of the stuff that you may need in a more complicated system.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.